My life before my divorce was amazing. I married who I thought was the love of my life. We had dated for almost 2 years. We had our baby girl 9 months and a few days after our wedding, and life was perfect. And I stayed home. I took care of her. I took her to all of her school activities, all of our church activities. We were very active in our church. I never had to look at the price of anything because my husband brought home almost $14,000 a month. And I just literally didn't have a care in the world. I thought I did. I thought there were things that I should worry about and that I did worry about, but come to find out, I didn't worry about the right things, which was protecting myself and making sure that if the bottom fell out after 20 years, I would land in a safe space. We had a rough patch, and when we were living in Arizona, and I went to work, and I worked for almost 5 years. I had a really great job, and he just kept at me until he kept saying, you know, I love you, I'm gonna take care of you all of your life. If you quit your job, I'll make sure that I put money in your checking account every week so you have money to do for our child and groceries and just things that you and our daughter will need. And he did. I finally gave in when we came to Florida, and my daughter was 10 years old at that time, and he was putting $900 in my checking account every 2 weeks. And I bought whatever I needed. I bought whatever my daughter wanted. I never thought twice about any expenditures. I had credit cards and, you know, and I wanted to find a job, but he was insistent. And it's very popular in our church that the woman stays home and takes care of her husband and her children and her house and all of that. And I just went along with it, and I just, you know, literally assumed that the way it was that day, we never fought, ever. And I just assumed that it was always gonna be like that. He'd been married 4 times before, and I thought, wow, we've been together almost 20 years. I must be the one that's gonna stick. So, yes, when I met him, actually, I was working 2 jobs in where I lived in Texas to support myself and my older boys. And he wanted me to just come move to California. He got me a condo, all of this. He said, you're not gonna work, we're gonna plan the wedding, and you know, and so I gave everything up, my friends, everyone I knew in Texas where I had grown up and spent most of my life. I moved to Southern California. It was he and I and my 2 boys, and we planned the wedding, and then immediately I was pregnant, so he had another reason for me not to try to find a job. And then once the baby came along, he didn't want me to work. He wanted me to stay home with our baby. And so I just, whatever, he had just converted me into the church. So whatever it was that he wanted or that he thought was best, I followed. And he made it clear that the Bible said where he goes, I would follow. And he was my priesthood leader in my home. You know, any problem that the kids or I had, we were to go to him with it, and you know, he would just magically make everything all right. Just a few days ago was the 3rd year anniversary of when I walked up behind him, and he was on his computer, and he had his Chase bank account open, and he had it clicked on savings. And he had tens of thousands of dollars in his savings account. And I did a double take, and I said, I didn't know we had all that. And when he heard me behind him, he closed the screen, And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. Try to make me think I had been seeing things. The next day, he said, he called me from work and he said, you haven't seen your granddaughter in a while. My little baby granddaughter was a year old. She lived in Canada with my son and his wife. And he said, why don't you go up there and visit them for a couple of weeks? And I said, well, it's January. We have school stuff. We have church things. And he says, no, don't worry about it. He says, I'll change my hours so I can take our daughter to school and, well, to church, first of all, 6 o'clock every morning. She had to be at church, then at school at 7. And he said, she can go to her best friend's house after school and I'll pick her up. And I wanted to see that baby so bad, you know, and then he said, why don't you take your little dog with you? And I thought that was kind of strange. It was January. She's a South Florida dog, you know, so she wouldn't have known what to do in the snow. And he says, no. So we took her to the vet. We got, you know, he spent hundreds of dollars getting her shots updated, her health certificate to cross the border, all of her grooming. We bought her a carrier for the airplane. And then I kept not wanting to take her for some reason. And I did, and 2 days after I saw the checking account, I landed in Toronto and got picked up by my kids and taken to their house. And I called him, and because he said, call me when you get there. And I called him and I said, I made it. Everything's okay. And he said, okay, bye. And he didn't say love you. And we had never ended any kind of conversation or walked out of a door without saying love you. So I called him right back and I said, David, you didn't say love you. And he said, we'll talk about it later. And I thought, wow. So a day or two after that, I got an email and he said, I closed your checking account, closed your credit cards, canceled the lease on the house, and filed for divorce and sole custody of our daughter. I canceled your return trip. Don't come back here. No one will meet you at the airport. And I was devastated. I mean, that was my life. My husband, my daughter, my house, my 2 dogs. I had one with me in Canada. The other one was still at home because it was more attached to my daughter than she was to me. And I didn't know what I was going to do. So I asked my son, can I stay with you for a while? And he said, sure, Mom. And you know, they're young and struggling and had this baby, and I stayed as long as I could. And I knew that if I came back to Florida, I didn't have anything. So I asked my son to take me to a motel, and I waited until the day after my 2 youngest children's birthday and tried to kill myself. And for some reason, the maids came early to the motel room that morning. Then they brought the police and the ambulance, and they took me to the hospital, and I died 3 times in the emergency room. And then I woke up 5 days later from a coma that they didn't think I was going to come out of. And I was so mad because I was so close to, you know, being done with everything, and here I was alive. I didn't have any chance to kill myself again because they locked me up for 40 days in the mental hospital. Finally, they thought I was getting well enough to come back home, and the American Embassy got involved and helped me get a bus ticket, but the only place they could send me was West Palm Beach because that's where my passport listed my home address. And I got here, and nobody from my church would answer my calls or return my texts. I tried to call my husband because I thought, you know, maybe he would help me. But we had already been divorced. I didn't know it at that time, but a month before that, the divorce had become final by default because I was in the hospital, a mental hospital, and I didn't have the $5,000 retainer to hire a lawyer in West Palm. I called so many times after I got served, and nobody would help me without that retainer. And so I came here, and I was homeless on the street, and I slept in Green Acres, which was where I had lived, on a bench in front of a Publix, because it was light, and I figured I would be more or less safe. But I didn't have any access to services, and I heard about places in West Palm, so I came up here to where I could shower, and I ate 4 times a week. I'd lost over 100 pounds. My doctor asked me how I did that. I said, it's a homeless diet. You only eat Monday through Thursday if it's not a holiday, and you walk up to 12, 14 miles a day everywhere you're gonna go, and you carry everything you own in a bag, you know. I went to the courthouse to look at my divorce papers to see if I had gotten anything. And when I got to the courthouse, the guard was looking through my bag, and she said, why do you have all this stuff? And I said, that's everything I own. And she said, why are you carrying it with you? And I said, because I'm homeless, I have to take it. You don't look homeless. And I said, what does homeless look like? You know, I'm a 54-year-old woman that dedicated my life to men and being a stay-at-home mom. And when I got pushed out of the airplane, I didn't have a parachute at all. So when I looked at the divorce agreement, the judge ordered that he sell my car for $2,000 and give the $2,000 to his lawyer for me to get at a later date, or whenever I guess I got back to Palm Beach. So I was very excited, but I'd been here a few months, and I called his lawyer, and his lawyer says, oh no, he still has the car, do you want to go get it? And I thought, oh my gosh, I can have my car, I can live in my car. And so I went down there to Green Acres. He had pushed my car out of his garage into his driveway. All the tires were flat and it wouldn't start. And I was homeless. I had no money at all. And I had no recourse, no way to claim my car, to where at least, you know, I could have locked myself up at night somewhere. Yes, he lied on the financial declaration. He didn't mention anything about his savings account. He didn't mention anything about our 20-foot sailboat, and I have all the records of the sailboat, the sail and the insurance and everything in my email. And he just, for whatever reason, felt like he could just ignore that fact. And there was an attorney that was in our church and helped him through all of this, you know, walked him through everything to literally just bury me.